I think this has been a big problem with movies for a long time. I think Deadpool is a great movie that's ironic and it breaks the fourth wall and it's funny. I think the problem, though, is that a lot of things try to be like Deadpool, but most actors don't have the charisma of Ryan Reynolds or Hugh Jackman, so it just doesn't really work.
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
This is a scene from Joss Whedon's The Avengers.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it before. In fact, you've probably laughed at it.
I did.
I know I did back in 2012, along with every single other person in the entire cinema. And realistically, how could we not? It was such a surprise, such a hilarious subversion of the classic villain monologue. I mean, think about it. It's literally the filmmakers
2012. I gotta way down.
is picking up all the serious tropes we've become accustomed to over the past 100 years and saying to the audience,
Look how good the CGI used to be, man. Look how good this shit was. How the fuck was it so? It was so good.
to the audience, hey, you and I have both seen this scene thousands of times before, right? We both know what you've come to expect from this stuff, so how about we just throw this formula around like a rag doll and try something new? And in the moment, this seemed like a really exciting proposition. I mean, come on, an era where stories are sentient, an era where movies know they are movies and which can therefore create this new age relationship between storyteller and audience, one which is interactive and two-sided, which knows our expectations and therefore knows how to play with and subvert them. What could possibly go wrong?
I think that the example with Loki is probably one of the worst examples in my opinion, because Loki is a and in a lot of ways he adds a lot of brevity to the story, and I think it does make sense. And also it's a superhero. But the other ones are
Well, it turns out things, lots of things, actually. Let me start by a little story I briefly told you.
I've seen this one.
Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
By the
it's
way,
Willow.
touchable 20 years on. For some reason, I missed out on these movies throughout my childhood. I don't know why. It just never occurred to me that I should watch them. So by the time I did eventually sit down to view the trilogy, I think I was 17. And by
Damn.
then was very much accustomed to the cynical, self-aware, ironic style of storytelling which had grown.
By the way, this movie was an S-tier movie. 21 Jump Street, fucking insanely good. Such a great movie. Actually amazing.
Throughout the 2010s
I
to
never
dominate
knew
movies,
Channing
and to a
Tatum could be
lesser
that
extent
funny.
television as well. Now, to this day, I'm pretty ashamed by what I'm about to tell you, but anyway. Fellowship of the Ring begins, we hear Cate Blanchett's narration, and I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. It's a bit overly serious, but whatever. And we get to the bit with Sauron, and we see this villain who kind of looks like he's from Power Rangers, and Galadriel is talking about a place called Mount Doom, so obviously I brace myself for the joke, for the moment where this ridiculous tension is broken.
It's weird how, like, obviously this guy's a bit younger, right? So, like, he grew up with movies like this, whereas, like, for me, like, Lord of the Rings was the norm. You know, like, then there was Gladiator, and, like, you know, we grew up watching Spartacus, and, you know, the Ten Commandments, and, Lawrence of Arabia. You know, like, and we also, by the way, we had movies like 300. Well, 300 was 2006 or 7, I think, right? That was a bit later. Like 13th Warrior, Braveheart. Like, we had movies like, for example, like, a really great example of a older movie that has, like, that same type of storytelling is Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones definitely had the same type of, like, self-awareness that, like, people sometimes criticize new movies for. But again, do you know what the new movies don't have? They don't have the charisma of Harrison Ford. Troy. Yeah, bro, Troy. Exactly. Like, there's no joke after fucking Achilles just kills, was it Hector of Troy, in front of fucking everybody, drags his corpse around, and he says, fuck y'all, I'm out. I'll be back, gonna kill everybody else later. That was it, right? It wasn't like he tripped on the way out and it's like, haha, funny. No, bro, like he just killed him and that was it. Yeah, the Mummy. Yeah, the Mummy was like that too. Yeah, they had a lot of like the comedy and shit like that too.
And it just doesn't come. So I think, fine, that was the prologue, whatever. You can't really make jokes in the prologue. Then we get the whole Shire sequence, and
But it's weird to see like a younger person watching these movies that's not familiar with the way the storytelling used to be. It's really interesting. Perspective I have.
These little guys running around the place smoking weed, making these weird faces. It all feels rather camp, rather silly, especially once the wizard in the pointy hat arrives. And so once again, I brace myself for the self-referential joke, for the film to acknowledge how bizarre it is. And once again, no such joke. And this basically
Disagreed.
I think that there's a couple of points of levity here. It's the guy, you know, hobbits aren't particularly or, you know, like the best inventors or anything. And it's like a dumb guy picking his ear. And then like the older guy who's laughing when Gandalf sets off the fireworks and the kids are happy. And then the wife comes out and she's mad. And then he's like, oh no, I actually hate this too. Yeah, of course, honey, it's so bad. You know, like, so there actually was brevity in Lord of the Rings. It's just that it wasn't done in a way that was cringe. Most of the brevity that's done now in Hollywood movies is written by people whose worldview is, what would the world be like if everything that my parents told me was actually wrong? It feels like almost bratty in a way.
And no such joke occurred. And this basically happens for the entire trilogy. Like, you think I would have gotten used to the tone after a few scenes, but no. My brain had been so molded over time by so much postmodern wing.
Nobody tosses a dwarf. And my axe and Gimli's axe just fucking breaks. Gimli absolutely had a lot of comic relief moments. And then fucking Merry and Pippin. Absolutely comic relief. Yeah, there were a lot of that. The problem isn't that there's comic relief. It's there's the authenticity and purity of the relief that doesn't feel like it's fake. Without second breakfast? Yeah, exactly. And then Aragorn throws him the apple. Yeah, there you go. There's so many examples of it. It's just done in a way that's sincere and authentic. Which is, again, to be fair, what the video is about. It's about sincerity and not jokes. But I feel like, again, a lot of times these two things get conflated. Sorry, I'm pausing a lot. Lord of the Rings is my favorite movie series. I have to fucking... Okay, let me move on.
Wink, nudge, nudge storytelling. That it could just not recognize sincerity. Now, let's actually stop for a second and think about how crazy that is. Because sincerity is not some outlandish storytelling device, only used by those daring few writers and directors. No, sincerity, since the dawn of time, has been the very essence of storytelling itself. Like, imagine having this conversation with someone even 50 years ago. They probably wouldn't even
This shit came out in, like, 2002. Can you believe this? This is the second movie? Like... And still, nobody can even come close to this? I actually think it's the way they record film nowadays. I'm actually a believer that I think, like, the old school film grain is a better cinematic quality than what they do nowadays.
Understand what you were talking about. For millennia, stories were told to convey truths, to share human experiences, to evoke from ancient myths and legends to classic literature to television and cinema. Sincerity has been the core element that binds the audience to the narrative. It's the fundamental ingredient that allows us to resonate so deeply with stories. Sincerity is what makes characters relatable, struggles compelling, and triumphs uplifting. Now look, I'm not saying that every story has to be this serious thing which dramatically changes our lives. There is absolutely a place for irony. The stories that...
Yeah, this was... Dude, Hot Fuzz was absolutely an ironic, really funny movie. I love this movie.
Themselves to seriously, for movies which know they are movies and have fun with that premise. In fact, this kind of storytelling can be incredibly refreshing and entertaining when done right. However, when this becomes the default, when every film in the cinema feels the need to follow trend by shying away from earnest emotions or genuine stakes, a lot of problems tend to arise. Problems which films with a more sincere approach would just
like this scene, this shit was so real. Like, I remember watching this in a movie theater, and I was like, what the fuck? Bro, like, because you gotta remember, because I was a little kid, right? And so, like, I'm like, oh man, the wizard died. That's so sad. That's awful, right? And then you find out he comes back. This dude leveled up. He fought the demon. He fucking killed it. Resurrected by God. And now he's back. Holy shit.
Ever run into. First of all, that amazing thrill of having your expectations subverted, that rush of excitement you get when a movie is meta, self-aware, ironic, well, it has extremely diminishing returns. Like I said earlier, everyone in the movie theater laughed well when Hulk picked up Loki and threw him around like a rag doll. Imagine if you watched that scene today, it just wouldn't be that funny. But why?
Well, yeah, because we already saw it before. Well, the reason, I don't know, I don't think really the reason for that is anything other than the fact that we already have seen it, and the joke was the abruptness of it. And so because we're already knowing that it's going to happen, it's not funny. You know, like, that's the reason why.
Well, first of all, the joke has been done a million times since, in both every Marvel movie and basically everywhere else. But on top of this, every single one of these self-referential jokes are essentially the same, just with slightly different coats of paint.
I gotta do it. Even though I agree a lot with this movie, this video. We always had this.
Like, sure, you can subvert expectations, break the fourth wall, play on pre-established tropes in as many different ways.
You want to hear a really good example of one when it was good? And this, by the way, was the best episode of this entire season. This episode went so fucking hard, and one of the reasons why is because of the fact that it was 100% sincere. This was so fucking good. Like, I know everybody makes fun of that, but even in the later seasons, they had, like, huge W's. It was really only season 8 that I think really sucked. There we go.
Been a long time.
And, like, you see this guy looks like a fucking badass, right? Look at this guy. Fucking Skeletor.
Last time I saw you, the little crow was your prisoner. The other way around now. What happened? War. You call that a war? The greatest army in the North is fight for the Southern King. We should get to the elders. Find some quiet talk.
Trying to reason it out.
I'm not kidding.
He's not my prisoner.
No? What is it?
We're allies.
You fucking traitor.
Uh-oh.
You fight for the crows now?
Uh-oh.
I don't fight for the crows.
And he's still trying to be reasonable.
We're not here to fight. We're here to talk.
He's just trying to talk
Is
about
that right? You and the pretty crow do a lot of talking, Torma.
Oh.
And when you're done talking, do you get down on your knees and suck his cock?
And it's not like it's one hit either.
Gather the elders, and let's talk.
That's it. That's it. It was. That was fucking badass. And so, like, there are instances where you have that sincerity, and, like, you have the same thing that's kind of like Loki getting thrown around. But it's just that some of the movies just don't have, I don't think they have, like, the writing ability for it. I think the difference is not the style of storytelling, it's in the quality of it. You're right. Yeah, it's the quality, because the guy that plays Tormund is fucking amazing.
As you want. But let's face it, the joke is pretty much this. Hey, you're watching a film, and we like, that's it. That's the whole joke, done over and over and over. And a huge problem with this formula, other than it becoming stale very quickly due to ridiculous overexposure, and it not being that clever or funny in the first place, is that it makes what is supposed to be unpredictable and subversive, predictable and boring. And in my opinion, the single best example of this is Thor Ragnarok, a film which I personally find to be rather overrated. Now, don't get me wrong,
I love this movie. I think this movie's great. It's one of my favorite Marvel movies. I do. I think it's such a great movie.
Like every single line of the joke in Thor Ragnarok is some meta-ironic quip that winks at the audience. But a lot of them are. And they're so frequent that it doesn't take long for you to predict when they're coming. Again, because they're essentially all the same joke. Like, the movie starts with yet another villain monologue, and we have this joke where Thor slowly spins away from the villain, and yeah, it makes your nose exhale slightly, maybe.
I think that we have to keep in mind that with Thor Ragnarok in particular, this is a superhero movie, and there are two average age groups that this is being targeted towards. 38-year-old men and their 12-year-old sons. It's a comic book movie. It is a comedic comic book movie. It's not supposed to be Lord of the Rings.
And then the film gets back to the villain monologue and you think, alright, well, let's hear what the guy has to say. And then they just do the exact same joke again, like 10 seconds later. And you just think, what's even the point of this? If you're just going to pull the rug out from under me every single time, I'm going to very quickly pick up on what you're doing and learn when to jump over said rug. Does that metaphor make sense? Like,
I can see what his point is, and I think actually, well, like, and you can compare that with, like, the movie after that, Love and Thunder, right? That movie should have been way better. It really should have been, but I just don't think it was written well. Like, I just, yeah, I loved it. The one sucked. Yeah, but, like, it shouldn't have sucked. It didn't deserve to suck. It deserved to be very good.
The thing that made this tone somewhat work in the beginning is that it was surprising and unpredictable, but I'm afraid to say that that ship sailed long ago, leaving us with, well, what exactly? To be honest with you, I'm not really sure, but whatever it is, it feels quite nasty, you know? Like a trick is being played on us, like we're being gaslit by someone who doesn't really respect the audience, nor the material they're responsible for.
True, so true, so true, true.
Which is kind of surreal to say out loud, but that's where we now find ourselves. Like, there's this one film which I'm sure no one's ever heard of before called The Last Jedi. I think it's the 8th episode of this epic space opera saga thing, and there's this one joke in it where we see this huge ship landing, and the cinematography and the music seem to be leading us to some big reveal. And then it turns out to be an iron. Like, it's an iron. Ironing some clothes. Now look, I can actually see how someone could find this moment kind of witty, and look, I'm not gonna argue against that. However, I would argue that the brief laugh this moment may perhaps offer is nowhere near worth what it takes away. Because this joke basically feels like the creators of The Last Jedi, whoever they may be, making fun of us and punishing us for taking any of this seriously. It almost feels...
I think that kind of makes sense, but, like, you have a character like Chewbacca, right? Who, like, clearly Chewbacca is the comic relief for the old movies, you know? Like, he was, and there were funny jokes in Star Wars. Yeah, R2-D2, yeah, Jar Jar, well, he was too much, right? Like, he was way too much. But yeah, C-3PO, R2-D2, yeah, and so, like, you had comic relief before in the past, I think the problem is that the story just sucked and it was told in a bad way. Like, I even agree with, like, Snoke being, like, nothing. It was like it was played out to be, like, this really big thing and it was nothing. I actually think that was a cool plot twist. It just wasn't capitalized on in a good way.
Feels nihilistic. In fact, no, what am I talking about? It is nihilistic. A moment like this wouldn't feel out of place in Spaceballs, you know, the film that was made to take the piss out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And now it's appearing in the real thing. Like, this is the point we've arrived at. There's a great video essay you should watch by The Closer Look about The Last Jedi's comedy, and in it they continuously bring up this word, bathos, which basically means an anticlimax created by a lapse in mood from the sublime to the trivial or ridiculous.
Yeah, this is exactly, so fucking true. It's like you have like no story nowadays can have a serious moment because everything has to be offset by a stupid joke or like some sort of funny aside. That's exactly, I completely agree with this.
It's a film presenting us with something that could potentially be rather emotional or epic or dramatic before pulling it away at the last second and going, "We got you. You thought it was going to be serious, but we were one step ahead of you." If this sounds familiar, it's because it's basically appeared in every single modern blockbuster created within the Hollywood system. And it is this type of joke which I believe to have caused the single greatest problem of this entire meta-ironic era which Hollywood currently finds itself in. You know what I was saying earlier about how...
This one might just be... we had a guy that did this. We know, there's a guy that did this. All 45, All Donald,
which Hollywood currently finds itself in. You know what I was saying earlier about how sincerity is the core element which binds audiences to stories, the fundamental ingredient that allows us to resonate so deeply with cinema? Well, then it would make sense that insincerity achieves the opposite, creating a barrier between the audience and the story that they're watching. It's funny, really, because a movie acknowledging that it's a movie is usually referred to as breaking the fourth wall. Yet, I would argue that a better term would be strengthening or refortifying the fourth wall. And the more frequently this wall is acknowledged, the more sturdy and opaque this barrier between audience and film becomes.
Well, and there's instances of, like, for example, like, maybe I'm pausing or talking about this too much, right? But, like, this issue of, like, this guy, her thinking that she's got something, I think this was it. I think this is it, right?
He was wise to use you against me.
And she got a lightsaber. He don't even have the lightsaber out. He doesn't give a fuck. The spin is dumb. Yeah, I think this was cool. I do. I thought this was fucking cool. Sorry to say. And then there's the other one.
I am so very sorry.
Yeah, here we go. This is so good.
That doesn't look good.
It isn't. It's him.
I think dialogue like that is the great example. Like, that scene, that dialogue didn't need to happen, and it's stupid. Like, I actually think that's the example of the stupid dialogue that dials things down. That's the cringe shit. So like she's training the white guy, Cal Kestis.
You have failed me, Inquisitor.
Avengers.
Watch this.
No!
There it is. It's done. You know, oops, I get the fuck out of here. And this is, by the way, this is the, yeah, she trained him. Yeah. Yeah, not going too well. No need to over-explain things, exactly. The Rogue One was good? Yeah.